All right, we're live. I'm here with Jake Lawrence. Hopefully we can get any audio bugs or anything worked out right now. Let me pull up the chat. It's been a while since I've streamed on here, so guys, I appreciate watching the video of me and Baitman Jr. Hunt and tackle, and appreciate Jake coming in tonight. He's watching me trying to figure out YouTube so I can get the chat going on here, but. Jake, you've been pretty busy, haven't you?
I have been an interesting year, as everybody can imagine, but it's been good. Caught a lot of fish, had a lot of fun, and we got a lot of good fishing yet to come. I'm excited for the fall, and a lot of what we're going to talk about today is really going to be what we've got coming up, what we're dealing with now, and what we've got coming up here in the next few weeks. So it'll be fun. We ought to learn something.
Yeah, and it's that time of year on pretty much any lake in the country where it's can be really tough.
It is.
You're exactly right. You got fish that you normally would think would be deep. They're going shallow. You got some fish that were shallow trying to go deep, and there's this thing called a thermocline.
You're exactly right. So I've been getting a lot of questions here in the last, the last 2 or 3 weeks is when we've seen this thermocline start to develop. In the southeast at least. I've been really fortunate. I've been traveling around a lot this year and really haven't been fishing the TVA system a ton like I normally do. But we're starting to see a thermocline develop in most every lake in this region. And what a thermocline is, I'm by no means a biologist. I might massacre this definition. But essentially what a thermocline is, throughout the year, you've got, and most everyone knows this, you've got the deeper that you go, the cooler the water temperature is going to be. And what a thermocline is at a certain point, typically later in the summer, usually around here it's about the middle or end of July when we start to see this develop. But you'll have what they call the stratify. So the warm water and the cold water will separate. And again, I don't know all the scientific reasons behind it, but when it stratifies, when it separates, the colder water sinks to the bottom. And for whatever reason, the dissolved oxygen, which is what fish need to survive, does not do well in that thermocline. So most people think that it's what you see there, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment. I apologize. This is kind of a last minute deal here, and I did not get any photos or screenshots of a thermocline. It's really, really simple to find, and we'll get into that in a minute. But when this when the water stratifies or divides, you've got warm water above, cool water below. That cool water does not have any oxygen in it, and most of what you'll see as far as the thermocline is concerned, you're going to see it's a very distorted image. Oftentimes, most all of the time, it's going to be towards the bottom.
Right.
It varies in depth depending on lakes and how deep that lake is and the things that are in the lake. But the bottom composition, so, every fall we've got a ton of leaves, we've got grass, all kind of stuff that get into the system, and eventually will sink down to the bottom. Over time, that will decompose, and when this thermocline develops, what you're seeing there, this fuzz that you see, is actually a lot of the bottom decomposition that is starting to rise. Oftentimes, I'm sure, we've seen this. I know I have in several places. A lot of times it's on a pond. You'll actually see where the lake or the pond turns over, and you'll see these real nasty greenish, brownish chunks of, kind of looks like scum floating.
Yeah.
That's actually the decomposition or the matter of what's left of the decomposition. And
Baitman Jr. is trying to interrupt
that's
you.
right.
So he's got to say hi.
That's it.
Well, we moved the camera, so get over here by Jake a little bit.
Yeah, come on in, bud.
And say hi. Oh, you're going to sit in Jake's
That's
lap.
right.
Wow.
Get in here. But a lot of times you'll be able to see this pretty easily on your down imaging. I have seen some sonar units that would show this, but a very, very easy way to be able to tell what a thermocline is. And it's really important this time of year to realize and understand exactly where that thermocline is, because there's absolutely not going to be any life below this thermocline. You hear the term fishing in dead water.
Right.
You are fishing in dead water under a thermocline.
I know a lot of guys seem to get confused, and I did a long time ago. They actually see the Thermocline and they say, "Oh, look at all that bait."
Right.
And it's
Right.
it's not bait.
You're exactly right. And the way that you'll be able to see that is once you get your unit set, it's going to be a very straight line.
Right.
It's, you know, bait, oftentimes you'll have a little ball here and say 12 feet and a ball in 10 or 14. This is going to be a straight line, looks real fuzzy and really kind of goofy looking. The easiest way to get your unit, whether it's Lowrance, Garmin, Humminbird, regardless of the manufacturer, if you'll go into your down imaging and turn your contrast on Garmin, it's actually called a gain, but turn your contrast up really, really high, it will make this Thermocline appear. You'll be able to see it really easy. Depending on what color palette will dictate what color the Thermocline is going to be. But again, it's very, very easy to see because it's going to be essentially a cloud towards the bottom of the water column.
Right, I've gone out with people in the summer and they actually think their unit's messed up. They say,
Yep.
"Man, I'm getting a double return of the
Yep.
bottom."
Exactly.
And what it really is, it's the Thermocline.
It's the Thermocline, exactly. So once you, like I was in Mississippi last week, I was over in East Tennessee a few days before that. I've been to a lot of different lakes, and what I encourage you this time of year is to not drop your trolling motor until you understand where that Thermocline is, because that's going to eliminate 90% of the lake. I mean, I was at a lake down in Mississippi, and there were very little of the lake. It was kind of frustrating. I mean, it was like 8 or 10 foot was about where the Thermocline was, and most of the offshore structure and a lot of the cover in that lake, it's actually a crappie lake, so a lot of the cover, the brush piles and the things that the bass are living around, were actually much deeper than where the Thermocline was. That was frustrating in a sense, but once I understood where that Thermocline was, it eliminates so much of the lake.
Oh, yeah.
It does make it a little easier. But again, I highly encourage you to make sure.
You guys have a bathroom?
I highly encourage you
All
to
right,
make
get under the
sure.
table.
I can get it back through this way if I need to.
Baitman Jr. wants to get on the live show, and then he's got to use the bathroom.
That's right. Can you get through?
I think.
You think? How about that?
That's what he does at the restaurants, going underneath tables all the time.
So again, once I determine where this Thermocline is at, it's really going to dictate where I'm going to fish, what I'm going to target. We all know the dog days of the summer can be, and most often times are a fairly difficult time to get them to bite. So I kind of attack it. It's a kind of a two-pronged approach. You're either going to have to slow way, way down and go really, really natural and more or less kind of force feed them to bite.
Right.
Or you've got to make them react.
I'm gonna slow you down too because
Yeah.
I'm reading the comments here, Jake. I got back up here. One Justin Brazil says Jake Lawrence is the man. I agree, but Troy Roach wants to know: do Thermoclines exist in shallower creeks that feed in
Holy
the
cow.
large rivers? Oh,
Man.
get that summit
Yeah.
away.
Ooh.
Got a wasp up in here, and I'm allergic. Just
All right,
stay put.
Yeah, I think we're good. So what? Sorry, I got distracted.
All right.
What?
Troy wants to know: do Thermoclines exist in shallower creeks that feed into large rivers?
They absolutely do. So where you're going to see this Thermocline is where you've got the most stagnant water. So if you've got this shallow creek that you're talking about, if it's got a good runoff in the back of it, if it's got some moving water, it's less likely, but it absolutely can still be there. So again, I was referring a few days ago, I was over in East Tennessee on a smaller lake, and we were fishing way up the river. In the river channel, on the first day that I was there, the river channel, of course, the whole bottom end of the lake, lower end of the lake had a Thermocline all the way up the river. The main lake had a Thermocline, but you got in the back half of these smaller creeks, much like he's talking about, and there was a little bit of runoff. We'd had some rain, of course. We've had these thunderstorms come through. We've had just enough runoff to keep some running water in the back, and all of the fish up that river were in the back half of that bay. And again, a lot of it was just based on where that Thermocline was. And you kind of have to understand that, when I showed up here, I got out of the truck and Baitman made a comment that I'd lost a lot of weight. That's not intentional. I have not. I'm way too lazy to be working out, and certainly don't watch what I eat. But in the summer, and the point that I'm getting at is, it's almost a bass very much like I've been.
Right.
I'm just kind of in survival mode. Like, I'm out there all day, every day, in 90 plus degree heat. I don't have an appetite, and neither does the bass. And that's why I say you've either got to, from my history, you've either got to go really, really slow, really natural, force feed that fish to bite, or you just got to make them react. And it's a little different than, say, the springtime. That fish is hungry, he's aggressive, he's wanting to bite. This time of year, honestly, most of the time you really, really got to slow down, which doesn't fit my style, but I'll do it when I have to.
I'm going to slow you down again. Jordan Bertram says, what if the thermocline is 60 feet deep? How would you look? So obviously, if it's 60 foot deep, you want to be fishing less than 60 foot.
Yes, right, and that's actually a good thing. I would prefer the thermocline to be.
He is really jealous that you're on the bait show right now.
I'm taking his spot. But I would actually like the thermocline to be that deep. Again, I don't know which lake we're referring to here, but most fish in this region aren't living 60 feet deep. So that's going to be less of a factor. It's still going to create kind of the situation like I was saying. They're almost, they're just in survival mode.
Right.
Even though that's way deeper than where they're living, there's still not a ton of oxygen even up, on the upper end of the water column. But that's a good situation to be in, because it's not as much of a factor. Whereas where I was on the lake in Mississippi, man, it took out a huge portion of the lake. I mean, there was just very little for these bass to live on, and I'll get into kind of what those fish were doing and why they were doing it. But I would feel much better about that as opposed to it being in 10 feet of water.
Right. Got another good question too. Casey Forster, good guy. He's always on the live streams. What effect do you think all the rain and cooler weather we're having right now will have an effect on the bass?
I think it's a very good thing. So this time of year, again, I am looking for any running water that I can find, because that's good oxygenated water. Oftentimes it's rainwater, so typically it's cooler than the water temperature. And just like I was saying, that lake in East Tennessee, if you found and I'm calling it a waterfall because I'm from West Tennessee and we don't have anything like that, but it would just be a little stream kind of coming off a bluff bank. If there was a piece of wood around that little running water, it was a guaranteed bite every time. So I really like to see, some rain move through. The one other issue that we always have this year is the weather is really stable and almost kind of to the point that it gets stale. Like, it's just the same thing every day. It's hot, sunny, and almost no wind. That's regardless of the time of year, that's a tough way to try to catch them. I mean,
Absolutely.
With the exception of cold, muddy water, that's about the next most difficult way to try to trigger a bass.
Now, I know a lot of guys that fished around here for years would always say when it gets real hot like this, they wanted to go fish Barkley. They want to go fish those old cold springs where that cold water's coming in.
Exactly.
And I gotta let you know, we got a $5 Make You Holler donation from the PB Dad. So appreciate the donation there. It says Baitman Jr. can get some more baits. I promise you would. I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a little break from Thermocline talk.
Perfect.
We got to do some unboxing. Somebody sent me and Baitman Jr. some awesome stuff.
Dude, I got a mosquito over here that is the size of a blackbird. It's unbelievable. Junior, you got to get it, bud.
So,
when you see it, let me know. He gonna eat me alive.
The guy on Instagram, Big Nasty Bait Company. He makes some homemade swim baits. And I peeked in here. I'm not gonna lie, I did a little peeking. He's first, Baitman. It's just a crankbait. Smack a jaint. Much love, Big Nasty. So this is the swim bait he sent me. This is all handmade. I believe it's with a resin. This thing's pretty wild.
Ooh.
That's a very similar to Jaint juice, but it's got a little bit more blue in it.
Smushed.
Looks nasty. I've tossed it in my pool. It's got awesome waking action. So it's got 3 joints. It's got this big, thick coffin bill-like lip. You can burn it and it go about a foot, 2 foot below, but what I really like is just waking it up. It's kind of got a little rolling action, but that tail kicks, gives it a really nice wake. Definitely will roll over some color cover, but it's got a soft tail on it, so similar to like Buka's 4x4 with a soft tail, different profile, nasty looking. That from
is.
Big Nasty Baits. That's a good name for a company. So appreciate that. But he also put a note in here. It says, Junior, this rat is for my daughter Natalie. It's named after her, the Nat Rat. She hopes you like it. You want to see it, Bait Junior?
Yeah.
The Nat Rat?
Let's see it.
Let's look at this thing. Oh, man.
Ooh.
Look at that. A little black and purple. And see, he also put some tails in here and some hooks. Dude, this would be a night
You reckon you got big enough muscles to throw
machine.
that?
Yeah, we got to get you a swim bait rod, a junior
I
size
bet you can
swim
throw
bait
it.
rod. So, on the back of this bait, this rat here, you see this little eyelet, and what that's for is he put a Magnum trick worm back here. We could trim it down if we wanted to, but and then you just shove it on here like so, and kind of twist it on. And now, got a big old rat tail on this thing. Now I can shorten the tail up, obviously, if I wanted to. He put, the reason for that eyelet in there is, we'll see, he even put some, Bait Junior wants that rat. You like the Nat Rat? You tell Big Nasty Bait Company, thank you.
Thank you.
I like that.
You take his toothpick here, and you find the bottom of that eyelet, and you just shove your toothpick through that hole. It's going to be down in there a little bit. You'll have to kind of root around, and then you can snap the toothpick off, and it'll hold the, there we go, I'm in. You snap your toothpick like so, and it ain't going to matter if your toothpick shows a little bit.
Man, that's awesome.
And then that toothpick, y'all can see that, it's holding that onto there. So you can make the tail shorter if you want to. You can change to different style worms. But man, that rat's dirty. I love that black and purple, man.
That is. That'd be a night bite.
Dude, night bite.
Mm-hmm.
What was the lake you fished in college, Jake?
Chatouge.
That's where that rat thing got really, really
good,
famous.
Good friend of mine, Tom Frink, actually won that. Won the national championship side of it on the rat. I believe it was the El Raton. Is that the old original?
Yes,
one of the first ones that. In fact, he actually gave me one about a year or so ago, and I'm so scared to throw it. I don't want to lose it. Apparently, you can't get those anymore. There's some big deal. I had to pry one off.
I like
of him.
this thing, man.
That is.
I love homemade guys that make stuff out of their home. You see this, my buddy, that rat up there, my buddy Narrowgate Baits, he lives in Murray, made that. So,
Awesome.
Baitman Jr., you've got a homemade rat, a Nat Rat. What do you think about it?
Good.
Good? Yeah, I figured so. I think you might have a girlfriend, actually. But
Uh-oh.
shout out to Big Nasty Bait Company. Follow him over on Instagram. Make some cool stuff. We got more stuff to unbox. And gotta let you know, DIY bass fishing, $20 make you holler. Thank you so much for that donation. Matter of fact, I bought some stuff from DIY bass fishing. It's in a box here. I'll talk about it later. Got some new top waters in there. So
I see you, Kipper. I hear you, loud and clear.
yeah, we got to get Jake one of those rats.
That's right.
I'm gonna go. I always like to go back through
already
some
started.
comments real quick. Bayou Burn. There's a saltwater soft bait company here in Houston named Big Nasty Baits. I feel like that'd be a popular name. Troy Roach, thanks for the black neon D-bomb suggestion. Those things are muddy water legit, man. They look good. I just showed Jake a few of those earlier.
That is. That's a. I don't know how y'all do that, but
You know what that reminds me of?
it is a wicked. It's got the chartreuse on the side.
Have you ever
like
seen
that.
a tobacco worm
No.
or like a catalpa worm?
Yeah, catappa worm. Yeah.
Very similar.
It is. I didn't think about that. That is a dirty little color.
What's up, Doug Hayes? Thanks for joining in. There's Big Nasty Bassin right there. Thanks so much for sending that for me and Baitman Jr., man. He's going to have a heck of a collection very soon. But the rat thing, while we're talking about it, and you have experience, when is the time to throw those rats? Or is that kind of a deal where it's in the daytime? Is that like a lake-specific deal? Or?
Yeah, so I'm probably not the right person to really dive too deep into that. I've thrown it a little. I've caught a few on it. I have not spent a ton of time to really figure out the nuances of when they bite at best and when they don't. I do know the best day that I've ever had on it was right around the spawn. It was about 3 or 4 days before they actually locked onto the bed. And it was funny, about half of them crushed it, and the other half would just come up and kind of like a glide bait, get right in behind it, but it would show themselves. And I would be able to, I think I flicked a blackie worm or some little finessey bait over there and was able to catch them. But I would certainly say, right now, here in the next month or so, these fish are kind of lethargic. Those bigger, slower moving baits, when a bass is not super aggressive and he's not really wanting to feed, a lot of times, a big, slow moving bait is a good way to get one to react, because he's one that's, a D-bomb or something,
Right.
Small.
What are you trying to do?
May not necessarily
You
be
need to go in.
the.
Yeah.
Bugs are eating Baitman Jr.
They are annihilating me.
All right, well, we'll get Bait Jr. out here and we'll shut the door so we can debug.
I'd rather be hot and sweating as opposed to getting eat up by
This is
mosquitoes.
the Baitman show. We don't ever know what's going to go on. Bro, all right, Bait Jr., see you, buddy.
Bye.
You going to pound it?
He's leaving you hanging.
All right.
Give me some.
Bait Jr. was very excited for the bait show tonight, and then when he found out Jake was coming up here, it was like
I kind of hurt his feelings.
his feelings was hurt. He's like, I'm not going to be the star.
That's right. But again, a bass is much more susceptible to eating something like this is just the first glide that I saw, but something of that size, that's what, 6 inches long?
Yeah, it's depth's 175.
Depth's 175, moving real slow, just easily moving along. They're more susceptible to eating something like this, a rat. There's several big baits that I'll throw. Again, I'm not the big bait expert. Matt Robertson's definitely kind of on that.
Matt Robertson's the guy on that
deal, and I'll give him all the credit in the world for it. I'll throw it for a few hours. I'll throw it for a little while, but when I get 1 or 2 follow, it drives me crazy, and I'll end up going to something else.
That's the worst part of throwing those big baits.
It is. Yep.
It's a good thing you'll see followers because you know fish in the area, but it will drive you nuts when they don't commit to it.
It will. You're exactly right. And there are some nuances. Like, I know Matt, of course, he might not want to talk about it a whole lot, but there are some nuances about those big baits to get them to react to it. And I'm starting to figure some of that out. A lot of times when I'm on a trip and it's target specific, I'll throw a big bait only because if I throw in there first, I kind of know what's going to happen. But I'll throw a big bait and try to get him to show himself, or get him to bite, better yet. But I'll do that to kind of try not to catch them. That sounds crazy, but I just kind of want them to show themselves, get them aggravated, get them kind of tuned up. And then oftentimes when you get one to do that, as long as he doesn't get too close to the boat, you can pitch something more finessey, something more in the right size, and a lot of times they'll come back and bite it.
Well, since it is summertime, and we've talked about the Thermocline a little bit, when do you start? Like me and you last year, straight up, we went and fished dirt shallow. Matter of fact, we fished beyond the dirt. We got really far back in the creeks.
We did.
Is that something guys can start doing right now, or
absolutely?
When do you start going, you know what, I'm not going to fish deep, I want to go real shallow?
So that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up, because when you get into the late summer, whether it's a Thermocline or not, some lakes they have enough water flow that the Thermocline doesn't really develop, but it's still kind of in the same situation. There's two things that these bass will do most of the time. Of course, in fishing, nothing's black and white. There's always exceptions to anything.
Right.
that we're going to talk about. But typically, they're either going to, so let's kind of jump back to Thermocline real quick. If there is a Thermocline, the first thing that I'm going to do is to find a piece of structure with a piece of cover. Now again, let's talk structure
and cover
and
are
cover.
not the same.
They're not the same, and for whatever reason, over time, that's gotten flip-flopped.
Right.
Structure is the bottom contour change or bottom composition change. Cover is your stump, your log, rock, grass, an object on the structure. So when in the late summer, of course, we always have a big shad spawn in the spring. By about this time, they're in that 1 to 2 inch range.
And we
Depends on what bait we have, but
pile
we do
on Kentucky Lake right now. There is more bait than I have seen in years.
in a
on
decade,
Kentucky
probably.
Lake. Yes.
Since the last time we had grass.
It's not baby Asian carp.
No, it's not. It's not. But you'll have that young, what I call young of the year, like pin minnows, and a lot of what we have is emerald shiners on Kentucky Lake. But these fish will migrate later in the summer. They become more isolated. They don't necessarily want to be around a lot of other bass. And they'll get on these pieces of cover. So what I'll do, say for instance, the Thermocline is in 12 feet of water. Well, I'm going to look on whatever mapping system I have, and I'm going to find whether it be a big bar that runs out or a creek channel, the sides of the creek channel, or say in that 10-foot range. I want to be just above the Thermocline. And that's the biggest key with the Thermocline. Most of the time, they're going to be within, say, 2 to 5 feet above the Thermocline. Because, again, the deeper you go, the cooler the water temperature is going to be, the little more oxygen until you get to this line. But they'll oftentimes get very cover-oriented. That's when you see your Schroeders, all your brush guys do really well. It's always about middle of July, and all of a sudden they show up.
I like the brush pile fisherman.
Yep, exactly.
Mr. Deefe's pretty good at it.
Deefe's a good one at it, and but if you can find a piece of cover just above that Thermocline, that is an absolute primo place for one to be. And again, a lot of times we're not necessarily talking about big giant schools anymore like we were in June or even May.
We're trying to catch more individual fish.
Exactly. So, now, I hope there's one there. That makes it easier. They get competitive. It's typically a little easier to catch, but that's not necessarily what I'm targeting.
So if you find Thermocline, let's just say it's 10 foot of water, say you have caught a few fish on boat docks, and wouldn't you just go, well, I'm just going to fish, I know there's some fish on boat docks, I can eliminate all these main lake boat docks that are in 17, 18 foot of water, and I can focus on these ones in 6 to 8 foot of water that I know got brush at the end.
Exactly. And it's always, regardless of the time of the year, regardless of what lake you're on, a river system, there's always a pattern within the pattern. And you hear that, you hear people talk about a spot on a spot. Well, a pattern, I can tell you I'm fishing boat docks. But you go to the north end of Kentucky Lake,
there's
goodness,
500 of them.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. That doesn't really, that gets you a little closer. But if I tell you they're on secondary points inside the pockets on boat docks, well, then you can run straight. You can narrow that down. So regardless of the time of the year, I'm always looking, and I'm a pattern fisherman. I don't like to rely on a spot. These bass are not, especially with the amount of fishing pressure that they're getting now, they're not reliable to stay in any one place. I see, from like 6 or 8, 10 years ago, these fish move a lot more than what they used to.
It's funny, you could used to graph a school on a Tuesday or Wednesday and go fish them Saturday.
Yeah, never have to check them again.
Now you can graph them on Friday and they may not be there Saturday.
And they're gone. Exactly.
They may be in the same area,
right?
But they may not be on that same spot.
Right.
So trying to find a pattern within a pattern is a lot more viable than just trying to rely on waypoints.
If the wind comes through and blows an area out, if I've got a pattern, it doesn't matter. Let's go run to, maybe it's a hard west wind. I'm gonna run to the west side of the lake because I know that's the leeward side, or was when the wind was blowing, and maybe that's not as blown out. It's just you'll find yourself being much more consistent if you can develop a pattern instead of a spot. Well, they're on this brush pile. Well, that's good, but what happens when somebody's sitting on that one brush pile, or whatever may happen? There's always a million different scenarios that can take place. But on the flip side of that, so that's always, of course, I'm just an offshore guy. I feel like my chances of catching a big bag or even running into a school any time of year is better offshore.
Right.
A lot of that comes with where we live and where we fish. But the other side to this, when you have a thermocline, it's very important to understand that there is a population of bass that are going to go ultra shallow.
Right.
And most of the time they're still cover oriented. They'll be around a little twig, a stump. They'll be around something up there, but they'll be ultra shallow. And I'll start, throwing my topwaters, my frogs, walking baits. There's a lot of different things that you can, target those fish with, but it's just important to know when you've got a thermocline, you either need to concentrate it, say, within 5 feet of that thermocline above it, or you need to go dirt shallow. Again, if you've got any running water in a body of water that you're fishing, that's a primo place as well. I found in East Tennessee that lake's full of culverts. We found most of those culverts didn't have any water in them, but there was one that had a lot of water. It wasn't running at that time, but it was a culvert that had water in it. And I skipped my frog as far back in there as I could, and I actually spooked him. I messed it up. I shouldn't have done that, but when I threw it back in there, a whole wolf pack of them came out.
Wow.
And my client actually caught one flipping out in front of him. It was kind of a cool deal. But again, even if there's not running water at that time, those fish will still relate around that area for when there is some running water. Now, if we've had, like we do most Julys where we don't have any rain, they're probably not going to be as related because there just hasn't been much running water. But if that's around, or if that's a situation that can occur, I'm definitely going to hunt that day. Hunt it down.
We're gonna get into some questions real quick. Got to moderate a little bit. Let's see. Some of this is just I've tried to answer on the chat, so I'm just letting Jake go, and then I'm trying to respond on the chat. But
man, I'm just talking. I
gotta break it up a little bit. Bub Tosh won the California Open.
He did.
So
how did he do that? I didn't.
I'd like to know how Bub won. I wonder if he won on a paycheck bait.
I know it. Whatever happened to paycheck?
I'd like to get him on.
I never. It just kind of went away. What was the deal with that? I don't.
Victor, Jake is a guide. He doesn't just guide on Kentucky Lake. He's been in Mississippi lately.
Yeah, I've been all over the place. It's been a really fun year.
Pickwick,
yeah,
Chickamauga.
I kind of get, I'm fishing like 200 days a year. I kind of get burned out fishing the same lakes and same areas, and so it's been really fun this year. I've gotten a chance to really travel around, and my favorite thing as a fisherman, whether I'm guiding or not, my favorite thing is to go to a new body of water and break it down. Like, that's my thing. If I catch some, cool. I mean, you always hear like the old school duck hunters, waterfowl hunters. I don't have to shoot. I just want to work them. It's kind of the same thing with mentality with me. Is as long as I can break down the lake and figure it out, and like I know I've kind of cracked the code for that body of water, I'm happy. Like, right. I hope somebody else catches them. I've caught a bunch of them, and don't get me wrong, I love catching them. But what I really, really enjoy and what really gets me off is finding them and figuring it out.
Well, our buddy Kirby Stevens. Say hello, Kirby on here. Great,
hey, bud.
Great guy. We need to go fishing together.
We do. He's got a young dude that is fired up. He reminds me so much of myself when I was that age.
Just a little hammer.
I mean, eating up with it.
I did get a question here in a second. Yeah. Troy Roach says, did I hear him say stay away from areas with floating, decomposing clumps?
Yeah, so typically that is a really, really bad sign. If I see that in a lake, typically you'll see it in smaller bodies of water. What that is, that's actually where the water has what they call a turnover. So that stratified water, the thermocline that's in the bottom of the water column, will actually flip. And I don't know, we'd have to get Menendez in here to explain exactly why that happens. But anytime that I see that, I won't just avoid that area. I will try to leave that lake completely, because it's just
that bad.
It's really, really tough. I mean, if you've got a tournament there, that's your home lake, you don't have anywhere close, man, slow way, way down. it's a really, really bad deal when that happens. But the good thing is, most reservoirs, most river systems, you're not going to see that happening. There's just too much water flow. Even, on a bigger body of water, even the wind is enough to keep that, churned up. And generally, you don't see that a ton. But if I do, I will definitely run as far away from that as I possibly can, because that is not a good thing at all. In fact, I don't know that I've ever caught them really, really good when I see that. I mean, it's just a really, really negative thing.
Couple cool questions here. So Caleb Morgan, good guy. He's on here a lot. He says he's wanting to do a fishing trip in October. Should he do Guntersville or Chickamauga? He wants quality over quantity. I've been to Guntersville in October and it sucked.
Yeah, I was going to say, Guntersville is, I love Guntersville, but I don't like it in the fall just because that lake doesn't, to me, it doesn't offer a lot of variety. So in other words, like most of the fish are all doing one thing.
You're going to frog them or you're going to punch. That's it.
That's it. Like I've gone down there and jerked a spook and a topwater, walking topwater like we do here for miles and not get a bite. You go throw in a cheese mat with a frog and you'll catch some. But it's just we've seen, especially here in the last few years, we've seen Guntersville in the fall get really, really tough. And a lot of that is they're doing mostly the same thing all over the lake, and there's just not a good way to get away from the crowds. There's just so many folks down there. It's great fishery. Not saying anything negative about it, but I would lean more towards Chickamauga in October as I would Guntersville.
Plus
You've just got some options,
Plus, you got the Elite Series coming there into September. So
you do. That's right. They just announced that a couple days ago.
Going to be very interesting.
It is.
Probably going to be a frog or Matt deal.
Yep.
I went there last year with Blake Hall, but it was like this time of year, about a week or two after me and you, and the frog bite had just started. He wrecked me on a frog.
Like, I remember you telling me about that.
I even told you it's one of the few times I just sat down in the boat and said I give up.
Yep.
Like Blake was. He was in the zone. It didn't matter how I worked mine. I changed frogs. I got 3 bites. I didn't hook up. But, dude, his bites when he hooked up were good ones. So
ferocious.
If you're going to book a trip in October to Guntersville, I would call Blake. He's my buddy. You can go a chick. Got some good info there. But, Jake, he had a heck of a day.
I did. I haven't spent much time on Chick, but what little time that I've been on there, I really liked what I saw. I tell you what's interesting about Chick, and this is kind of off subject, but I'm really into how lakes set up, and again, how a lake sets up is going to determine how I attack it and how the fish live. So I'm really into that. I was really surprised in going there, and I'll be the first to tell you, I do my research on a lake. Like I'll hunt around, but I don't get a lot of info. I don't like to. Again, that's part of my fun is to figure it out. I don't want somebody to tell me to, go to the second pocket in this bay and catch them. But just what little research I had done or studying up on it, and what I know about Highland, kind of a Highland reservoir. Of course, we're getting over there towards the Appalachian Mountains. I was really surprised at how much soft bottom was in that lake. Like you would think up there in the mountains, it would all be bluffy, hard bottom out there, and that was absolutely not the case. Now, that's twofold. It disappointed me because a lot of stuff that looked really, really good on the map, when you actually idled over it and it's all soft, silty bottom, that kind of disappointing. But on the same side or on the flip side, it's condensing those fish down. When you found some hard bottom, there was generally a school of fish there, and that's why you see on Chickamauga these huge, like when you have a big tournament there, these huge clusters of boats. Like when the FLW Super Tournament was there were like 6 or 8 boats around one school. That's because every bass that's living offshore within, say, a mile or 2 miles of that is all on this one hard spot. That's just what they have in that area available to them. So that's why you see these massive schools. There's a handful of really, really big schools on that lake, as opposed to, say, Kentucky Lake when they used to really get offshore and school up. It would typically be smaller schools, but there might be 3 schools in a 1 mile stretch.
Right.
Pickwick's a lot the same. It's as Chick. It's for a totally different reason, but they tend to get in large groups, and it'll be every fish within a certain distance will all live in this one place. That's good and bad. I can talk about that all night, but
let's see. Nate Swan says, "Is drop shotting brush piles a good idea, or is that a disaster waiting to happen with breaking off all the time?" Personally, I think it's a great idea because I know it works.
It is, and I actually caught them last week at Mississippi. We were fishing brush piles, but I do encourage you to upsize. There's a lot of different names for it: power shotting, bubba shotting. I was throwing it on my 7.3 medium heavy rod, 15-pound fluorocarbon. And it's still a light wire, but it's like I think it's a VMC 2-aught. There's a little straight shank. Looks just like a flipping hook.
Right.
Like the Robo Worm, but now I wanted a little meatier. I'm throwing a big heavy rod. Not a heavy, but a heavier rod. I didn't want to flex that hook out. But just upscale everything, upsize. I was throwing like a 1/2 ounce weight. If it's a real thick brush pile, sometimes you'll have to downsize your weight. Oftentimes in a brush pile on drop shots, and really any bait, most of the time it's not the hook that gets hung. It's your weight. The weight will wedge between two sticks or something like that. And in fact, I never lost a drop shot. 2 or 3 days I was down there, I had to go over there a bunch and get it, off the backside of a limb. But absolutely a good way. And I will tell you, I put a long leader on there. I mean, it was so long, it was kind of difficult to cast. I probably had a 36-inch leader on there. But what I'm wanting to do is to get that bait up as high as I can. And what's important to know about a drop shot, I personally cast a drop shot a lot more than I do vertical right over the top. These fish in our area just don't like that boat being close to them. They get sketchy and it's kind of hard to catch them. But if you're wanting your bait to be say 12 inches off the bottom on a cast, you really need to make that leader about 20 to 24 inches.
Because the angle of your line.
Because the angle of the line. Exactly. And I could, in Mississippi in this lake, I could see these bass. They were all suspended up towards the top of the brush. And again, I would rather be 10 feet above a bass as I would 10 inches below him. Just their anatomy, the way they're built. The only blind spot that they have is what's directly below them. So I want that worm up. If anything, I want it above him, but I made it as long of a leader as I could possibly cast. My goodness, I looked like a goofball out there trying to lob this big drop shot out there, but it did work. I caught him.
Here's a good question. Austin Hicks says, "Jake, what's one tip for finding spotted bass offshore when you have stained water?"
Ooh, stained water. I assume we're talking about this time of year. Man, that could be answered in a million different directions.
I might have to get Ryan Coleman over there at Lake Lanier to answer that.
Exactly. What initially would jump out to me is if it is really stained, a lot of the fish aren't going to be offshore, or if they are, they're going to be related to the bank. So anytime that, and I'm kind of giving away a little juicy deal here, but anytime that the water is high, or if it's muddy, and I mean pretty stained muddy, there's always some fish that stay offshore. Everybody floods the bank, wants to go flip bushes. I love to do it myself. But in a tournament, sometimes I want to get away from the crowd. I want to do my own thing. There's always some fish that are going to live offshore, but they're always going to be related. Again, I'm talking a high water situation or really, really stained water. They're going to be related to something that runs into the bank. So I've caught them. I was down at Sam Rayburn last year, and the lake was like 2 feet high, 3 feet high. And I was catching them offshore, like 20 to 28, 30 feet deep, really deep. But they were only on these bars that would run way out into the lake, and it had to run into the bank. Now, some of them were 1.5 miles out into the lake, but you could go look for hours on stuff that didn't touch the bank, and you would not see a bass. Really? It's amazing why that makes a difference. It's really interesting to me. If you're going to be 1.5 miles offshore, why does it matter if it touches a bank up there? But it does. So I would, in a situation like that, that would be the first thing I would go look. Some long tapering points. If you could find some brush that's fairly shallow, I would. Anytime that the water is off colored, they're typically going to live a little shallower. Again, that doesn't mean on the bank. That just means shallower. So that would be kind of where I started, and I would, based on what I saw and the bites that I got, I would kind of let the fish try to dictate where I would go from there.
Dude, I don't see how you talk as long as you do. I'm constantly having to drink stuff. Let's give you a break. Let's look at some more baits. So, my buddy, DIY Bass Fishing, he sent me a ton of Hook 1 decals. I guess if I ever buy a kayak, I can, glitter it up. Some pretty cool decals. Baitman Jr. likes these, as long as you don't put them in his walls. But I ordered some baits from him. They had a big sale there at Hook 1. Look at all these stickers, Baitman Jr. Okay, you got.
Ooh, some of these may have to go home to the Lawrence family.
Check this out here. I don't know if Jake's seen one of these. This is my color, dude. This is
that's the Brat.
Yeah,
is that what
there's
that
one
is?
you can know. This is the big Brat Rapala BX Brat.
I gotta check this dude out.
So Baitman Jr.'s got the small one. It runs really good, but this is the big one. And I had to get this color because that's the deal.
Here, I'll play with it.
He's already got one out.
Whoop.
Already been hooked. Check that out, man. That's a pretty big square bill. And so the cool thing about the Brat, well, a lot of people don't know, is it is plastic on the outside, but it is basically balsa infused inside. So it's going to have a pretty high flotation. But one cool thing about this, man, you can bang this thing off boat docks. It won't shatter. Well, it can crack, but it won't affect the action of the bait.
That is pretty neat.
I like that bigger size. And, dude, dirty water, this color right here, clear water, I like it. I like how this bait's built. We probably should have threw it in the pool before it came out.
Yeah, I wish
me
we
and
would
Jake
have.
tested some square bills, a bunch of stuff in the pool,
Yeah.
dude. Some of the stuff I've been talking about on the show is going to blow your mind when you see it underwater.
It's always bad when I come over here.
Yeah.
It's I told Baxter, I said, dude, you've already made me spend like $300. We're just out here tossing little balsa baits and little cool stuff in the pool out here. It's always dangerous when the two of us get together.
Some of those balsa baits I've been showing you guys, they're not cheap. They're 25 to, the Coulter cranks. I wish I hadn't told you guys there was one on eBay because it went for like $180. I should have kept that to myself. Yeah. But we put one of the Coulter cranks in the pool, and my pool's gin clear right now. You'll see why people are paying big money for these.
Absolutely.
The action,
is
it's unreal. The balsa concept, it's crazy. Each builder's baits or style baits has got a totally different action.
And I tell you, I have so much respect for those guys that do that. I'm gifted in a few departments, but working with wood and making, being able to replicate, and I know that's hard to do, but being able to replicate that action, hand carving all of that, it's amazing to me, and it's absolutely worth the money. I mean, I know a lot of guys look at a square bill and say, man, I'm not throwing a $50 square bill in the middle of a bunch of cypress trees, but you throw one, you fish
when you
one.
see one in the pool,
you'll see why.
Does what some of these did. One of them has it didn't hunt, but it had super tight action that you're not going to see in a production bait. And then the other ones, it would just have it settled, and all of a sudden it just looks like a TV show. It glitches, and that's the hunt. And then the other ones,
exactly.
You definitely. So I got to figure out how to make the best video on that. But got those. Had a demon shad wrap. You always got to get that. Let's see. Caleb Morgan asked another good question. Would it be safe statement? Channel swings hold fish year round. I can pick up the Thermocline or stay in the current and have a decent starting point.
Absolutely. Channels or creek channels in general is always a high percentage place. 12 months out of the year.
It's a migration point.
Exactly.
It's like a four-way stop.
Exactly. So when they're coming in and out, you have to understand that regardless of what time of year, there's always some fish that are moving around. They're, for whatever reason, fish are a lot like we are. We all have our own personalities, and we all like kind of, to some degree, do our own thing. And so a channel is always a good place to start. There's some fish somewhere along that, and again, kind of going back to a few shows, I guess that was last year when we did talked about offshore. Anything different along that creek channel is what I'm specifically looking for. So a creek channel swing, maybe it's a high spot, maybe it's a little drain that dumps into it. Anything different along that creek channel is a high percentage place. As they're traveling up and down the creek channel, they'll stop there and kind of hang for a
Alton
bit.
Jones Jr. and Andy Morgan told me a long time, bass and deer are very similar.
Yep.
You hear a lot of people that in deer hunting, if you don't know about the old timers, say, I just hunt fence rows.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? That's their travel corridor.
That's their travel corridor.
And
exactly.
a lot of times those deer are killed on fence rows, but they're in a thicket,
Right.
or they kill them and you know, they like points and there's places that funnel to those fence row that the deer can migrate from. And just because creek channel swings does not mean you have to be on a main lake or even the mouth of a creek.
No, absolutely not.
Some of the best stuff I fished in the fall is creek channel swings in the back of a bay.
Yep, dirt
That
channel.
last part of the channel where it comes to the flat
Got him.
is amazing, man. All right, what else I get in here, Jake? I got to answer this question. Nate Swan, what water clarity would you prefer to use Jank Juice in? That's my color. You had the jerkbait, the 6 cents.
Yep.
I'm gonna be honest. I've caught a lot of fish in clear water on that color. I don't mean gin clear. I mean 2-3 foot of visibility, or stained water.
Yep.
That's when that really, really shines. But I'm gonna be honest here. If you catch them on a Chartreuse and blue crankbait, you can catch them on
Absolutely.
that color right there.
So it's interesting. Blue in Chartreuse and purple in Chartreuse, to me, is kind of this. I don't know how the best way to put it. It's a good starting point. So for whatever reason, they'll bite it sometimes in gin clear water, and they'll bite it sometimes in really, really muddy water. It's a bait like the LG bone.
Yeah, LG bone.
That's if I'm gonna throw a jerk bait, I don't care what brand it is, what manufacturer. That's the very first color I tie on, regardless of watercolor. Now it may take me 15 minutes to go to something else, or Pro Blue or Jank Juice or something like that. But blue in Chartreuse and purple in Chartreuse are two kind of staple colors that they will bite. If I was only going to have, say, 3 colors in every hard bait, the Jank Juice, the blue and Chartreuse, those two, one of those two would be one of them. Absolutely.
I mean, there's days that they'll bite a Chartreuse and blue and they won't touch that purple. And
Oh,
there's
yeah.
other days.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
me and you've talked about it. This is something we've talked to on the phone lately, or this year. The way Kentucky Lake has been fishing, I'm not saying every lake in the country, when they find a bait that you're catching them on, they've been so specific to that bait and color.
It has.
Now, it may change every day.
Right, and that's what I was fixing to say. It doesn't mean when you figure it out that that's the deal that you can run. Hopefully you can, but it tends to change. But it's kind of like, used to, man, you could pick up a spinner bait, you could pick up a chatterbait, whatever bait it was, you could always get a few bites on it. Now it seems like if you missed, and this is maybe not the best analogy, but if you miss the color or the bait by an inch, you might as well missed it by a mile.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get a bite. You go right back through the same area, or hear of a friend of yours go back through the same area with a different color, maybe it's a different bait, whatever it is, and trash them. And you're like, how in the world did not one of those fish show themselves?
Yeah.
It's really funny.
Well, we just got a $50 make you holla from Kip Stanley.
Oh, Kipper. How about that?
I'm gonna say that's one of your buddies.
That
I'm
is.
I'm gonna have to split that with you, Jake.
Yeah, so that's Monty's buddy. Monty and Thurman and all that crew.
If Kip's a friend of Monty's, he's a friend of mine.
Yep, you're exactly right. One other thing I wanted to just touch on. We don't have to. I know we kind of
talk about anything
beating a dead horse.
Except politics and religion.
That's right. We're not going there. We seem to kind of get on this every time that I come onto the show, but the lake is constantly evolving, and what I want, I get a ton of questions. A lot of guys are asking, why are these fish on Kentucky Lake not living offshore, not schooling up? And from my best, I wouldn't necessarily call it a guess. I guess an educated guess. Obviously, we don't have as many threadfin. We don't have as many gizzard shad anymore. Most of the population, although that being said, we did have a great spawn of pretty well everything that lives in Kentucky Lake this spring, so that's a good thing. most of what we have bait fish wise is an emerald shiner. And you have to understand that a bass is, and I say bass, any predator is going to do what his prey is doing. So, for instance, a couple weeks ago, my wife went out of town for a few days. If I sat there and waited on her to cook dinner every night, I'd starve to death.
Well,
I had to change my eating habits. I had to change
my
way.
That's how I've lost most of my weight.
That's right.
No, I'm just kidding. My wife cooked tonight for us.
She
did an amazing job.
It was wonderful. Very good. But the point that I'm getting at is these emerald shiners act totally different than what a gizzard shad or a threadfin do. In the fact that, and I actually relate them very much to blueback herring.
Yes.
They're very nomadic, pelagic. They tend to roam in the top third of the water column, regardless of what's below them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily related to a ledge like these gizzards and threadfin. On Pickwick, they tend to use
they use the creek channels,
these little points
and
and things like that, and they're all not always. Most likely they're down close to the bottom. These these bait fish do not do that. Mm-hmm. Now I will say, it has made our shallow fishing a lot better because the ones that stay shallow really relate around a lot of cover, a lot of stumps and wood, so it's made it better in that sense. But I really think that's why. These fish have stopped schooling up offshore, and it's actually, believe it or not, there's a ton of fish that are still offshore. They're just not getting on the bottom. They're not setting up. I've got a good buddy of mine, Ross Wimberly there, crappie guide in Big Sandy. This time of year, they're pulling a lot of crankbaits and road runners. He's catching magnums. I mean, jaints pulling crankbaits.
big jank
like
crappie.
no bass.
Bass.
I'm talking 6-7 pounders.
Pulling crankbait
On a regular basis, not just a random one here and there. He had a day probably 2 weeks ago where he had over 25 pounds pulling crankbaits.
So what you're saying is
12 feet, 8 to 12 feet deep over, he said the biggest one they caught that day was over 32 or 3 feet of water, 8 or 10, 12 feet deep. They're just roaming around chasing this bait, and he's not the only one that's doing that. But what I'm getting at is they're still out there. We just can't target them. Right. I mean, those guys are covering 4 to 7 miles a day pulling those crankbaits at 1.5 miles, 2 miles an hour. If we just went out there and started fan casting a 12, like a CD15 or CD20 out there, there's just no way we're going to come across enough of those fish during the course of a day. So, again, what I'm getting at there is, and it doesn't matter just, I'm not talking specifically about Kentucky Lake. Anytime that you've got a major forage change, we saw this years and years ago on the Great Lakes with gobies. Everybody freaked out and said, this is the end of the world.
It's going to ruin the Great Lakes.
It's made the best bass fishing in the world. I mean, it's unbelievable. But those guys had to change the way that they had always fished for them. It took a few years to figure out what these gobies do and how they live, and again, the predator fish is always going to follow the prey. So just always keep that in mind, and hopefully that'll answer a lot of questions that I've been getting about what these fish are doing on Kentucky Lake.
Yeah, and Jordan Bertram, he basically says, what about alewives? Are they a lot like blueback herring?
They are. I don't know a ton about the alewives, but they are.
But I can tell you, up north, the smallmouth follow those things.
Eat them. But they are very nomadic, and you'll see, I think St. Clair's got a pretty good population of them. Of course, St. Clair's a big bowl, not a whole lot of contour. Those fish roam a ton there. If the wind direction changes 5 degrees, they might move 2 miles. It's just they're following their prey.
Tony says they have a ton of alewife here in Maine. My buddy Matt Robertson told me Maine is the most underrated fishing state. He said he's gone up there several times now.
I think he's been with Fighter and all them up there.
Smashes them in Maine.
How about that?
Let's see. Randy Burnham, good question. What if you have shad and bluegill? What color do you recommend?
I just let the fish dictate that. If I've got 2 guys in the boat, myself and somebody else, I'll typically, one of us will throw kind of a bluegillish pattern, a natural pattern, and the other will throw a shad pattern. I will tell you, the cleaner the water, regardless of what they're feeding on, whether it be shad or bluegill, the cleaner the water, the more still the day is, the less water disturbance you have, the more natural colors I'll go with. So I'll get away from like our Jaint Juice and or even our sexy shads. I'll go to more translucent colors as far as the shad patterns, or even if I've seen it a ton, when they're feeding on shad, but they'll bite a green pumpkin jackhammer. I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I think it's just more natural. They don't get as good of a look at it, whatever the case may be. But to answer your question in short, if I've got two guys, I'll try, one with one pattern and another with another. But it's important to always keep in mind the cleaner the water, the more still it is. I'll go more natural with those colors, and vice versa.
All right. Answer a few questions here. That was a good answer, Jake. St. Crest, great dude. Always on here quite a bit. Matter of fact, I found him some G-tail worms I got to send him. But Baitman, thoughts on Boyd Duckett's new line of baits that are exactly like the Mullex baits? Do you have any info on it? That's a shame. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Boyd Duckett didn't copy Mullex baits. Yes, you heard me right. Duckett didn't copy him. He bought the company.
Oh.
This actually happened about 2 months ago, and I was told do not say anything. And Boyd has more money than me, so I decided I was not. But Boyd Duckett purchased Mullex baits, so
how about that?
Pretty interesting deal there.
That is. I tell you, he's really. I like what Boyd and Klein and that whole crew's kind of done. It's interesting what they're where they're going with the sport, but I like it. I like change. I'm weird. I don't like I don't like anything stagnant.
Right.
I mean, I like change. I like things.
I'm not going to get into politics, MLF versus Bass and all that. But I like all three formats.
Yep.
And if we always did the same thing every tournament for years, it would get really, really boring.
Yeah, and I'll say, for me, it did get somewhat. Now, I'm a diehard. I watch. I mean, today I had both FLW Super Tournament and Bassmaster Live going at the same time.
David Mullins in second place.
How about that?
Go Vols.
Yep,
Mr.
all
Mullins.
smallmouth too, which that never happens on Champlain. You always have to catch a few largemouth.
Did he catch him cranking?
He caught some cranking, caught some drop shotting, and some cranking. He's being a little sneaky on that plug. I'd like to know what plug he's throwing.
I'd like to see David Mullins win. I think he's a great guy.
He is.
Pretty good duck hunter too.
He is a pretty good duck hunter, especially for an East Tennessee boy. They don't have too many of them over there.
Let's see. I'm just popping in now. Have we talked about the new goober rods? I was going to try not to do the goober rods. Let's talk about these new Jinko rods.
Yeah. So Jinko's just
released. By the way, I gave Jake a lot of shit for using blue rods last year, but
you did.
I've actually used them, and I've been pretty critical of Jinko. I have no problem saying that, but the rods were really nice.
Yes. And you'll be really, really impressed with this one.
Whoa! We got another $50 donation.
How about that?
$50 make you holla. Thank you, drummer Troy G. Appreciate your donation to the channel. That's how we get the cool baits.
That's right. That's right. On the Jinko rods, it's the High Roller series. They just released a few weeks back. They made some modifications. They kind of toned down the color of the rod. That was one thing that. What influence I have. I really wanted a not necessarily a higher end rod, but I just wanted something a little more standard, I guess.
Right.
We've got one that's kind of flashy. It's out there, and you cannot. And it's a great marketing strategy. When you walk into a tackle store, that is the very first rod that you see, and likelihood of you going over there and picking it up is much better. So I understand where they went. But I'm not a flashy guy. I like real natural stuff. The High Roller series, they made a few modifications, put a really good Alps guides on there. My favorite thing about the rod, of course, they put a really, really good blank in there, but they made the grip, the reel seat, and the grip itself very small. And I like that because...
you got one here with you?
I do. It's out in the truck.
Go grab that.
We'll grab one. See if I can get it without.
Yeah, we may break some shit in here. Hopefully not the rod. But
I wish you could show them mine.
We gotta figure out a way where we can stream at the pool, guys. If y'all seen some of these coulter cranks, it will freaking blow your mind. I could literally test baits in the pool all day long. I think I just need to hire a freaking cameraman. But guys, it feels good to be back streaming live on Saturday night. And I'm glad Jake is here. Ashley, if you're watching Jake's wife, hello. We fed him well, and thanks for loaning him over here for a little bit. Tom Monsour said shit 5 times on FLW today. I love it.
He did. Dude, he had me cracking up. He
Yeah,
said
they
it on
don't-
stage too.
They don't want me on the. He didn't wear his mask or nothing. He didn't social distance. As soon as he won, he's giving hugs and fist pound, and Wheeler's just over there like, "Yo, dude, you got back up. We're on TV."
That's right. But what? Get this trimmer head off there.
Yeah, we want to have you talk about that. Jake is a scrounger machine, and I want to have him talk about that.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Let's see how many people we got live here real quick, Jake.
right.
Quick update. I'd like to see if we can't smash the like and share and see if we can't get. We're 175 watching. Surely we can get to about 250. Let's see if we can get
Let's do it.
250.
Let's do it. What I was referring to is, and it's kind of hard to tell. I wish I had one of the Gambler series here, but you'll notice this reel seat is very, very small. The handle is very small. I don't have the biggest hands in the world, and a lot of folks don't. What I've noticed is the larger this handle, the reel seat and the handle here, is the more open your hand is going to be naturally. The more open it is, the more fatigued you get. So throwing, a trimmer shad's not, you don't really overwork yourself with that. But say a jerk bait, deep diving crankbait, your big heavy baits, and really, stroking a jig, whatever it may be, if you've got your hand really opened wide, it seems to fatigue. You'll feel a lot of tension in these muscles on the top of your hand. And of course, I'm doing it almost every day, so it really makes a big difference. But I can really get close, very compact, almost like making a fist. And I really, really like that. That's one of my favorite things about this ride. But it's super light, super durable. I'm jumping in and out of boats and in and out of my trucks. I am the worst at taking care of rides. So far, these dudes have held up flawlessly. I've been really, really impressed with them. And I know everybody's got their own, brands, and I'm not saying I like the 6 Sense rods. I like, the NRX rods. There's a lot of them that I like, but I've been working with Colton for about a year now. Just kind of, he'd shoot me a rod. I'd give him a little feedback on it. We tweak it a little, and man, I'm really, really happy with this ride. And if you're in the market for some, get in touch with me on my Facebook. We're actually working on a promo code to get a little discount off. So we'll work on that here in the next few days.
We like discounts.
That's right.
So I do notice that Jake is also rocking the Daiwa to two. You're a believer in the Daiwas.
I am, absolutely. I've got probably 25 or 30 Daiwas. That's the CT100. I've had I believe it's the 150. That it's the only one that I've seen do this, and I know, again, I'm super hard on stuff. I know that I messed it up, but this little T-bar the other day kind of got funky on me, and I put this 100 series. I've always fished a scrounger on a 150, but I really like that 100 series.
Dude, so iCast come out. This one's no longer going to be.
Oh, really?
The CT has been redesigned.
I see. Okay.
It's still going to be $129
Yeah.
bucks, but they just kind of update it cosmetically.
I will tell you, and I am in no way, shape, or form affiliated. Whether I am or not, I'm a straight shooter. I'll be honest with you about just about anything. That T-wing system is bad to the bone. That is the deal. On a regular basis, 3 or 4 times a week, we'll hop in the boat with somebody I've never fished with, and we'll jump out there. And of course, I don't think about it. I'll wing that sucker out there about 60 or 70 yards. And when most people say they throw 60 or 70 yards, they're throwing like 40 yards. Yeah. I can wing it further than I want to reel it back. And it's always the same comment. My goodness, what are you doing different? I'm not doing anything. It's that reel. When you've got this T-wing system, and I don't know if I can do it. I can't in here, but when this T-wing system, when you press the button, I don't know if you can see that, but this is a really open face here, and it cuts down on the friction as it's coming off of the spool. If you've got the standard little worm guide, it's creating friction. Each time that you get to the side of the spool, it's creating friction. Anytime you've got friction, it's going to obviously slow the momentum down. So that T-wing system really, really helps throwing light baits and even heavy baits, super far into the wind, anything else.
We're going to talk about this bait real quick because we're going to have to shut the door. This is the deal that's, Jake, you're the scrounger guy. I'm not going to say you've won as much money as Jason Lambert. Because,
no.
But the guys here, you've won a lot of money on that bait.
Check out how eaten up that one is.
I don't know if y'all can see this.
That one's caught about 50.
Ooh, it is focusing real good. Look how you can tell this thing has been.
That actually is it's a sexy shed style color.
Yeah.
They've literally eaten the chartreuse off the sides of it. There's zero chartreuse. That's not a blue shad Castaic Jerky J. That's actually I forget what they call it, but it's a sexy shad color.
So tell me, what is your snap? Looks broke here.
No, so that is actually you'll want to show
Do y'all
that
see
to
this
them.
snap on here? Because I think this is the secret.
It does help. This style of bait is very fickle, and I think that is one reason why a lot of people have trouble with it. So we'll start with kind of the action of the bait and what this bait is doing. So you'll notice that we've obviously got the bill, standard crankbait, the bill's angled down. Obviously this bill's angled up, meaning that as soon as you start to reel this, it's rising to the surface. And the absolute number one mistake that most people make with this bait is they don't realize how fast this gets up in the water column. So I'm throwing it on, and I know this is totally contradictory to what most ledge scrounger fishermen will say. I'm throwing that on 10-pound fluorocarbon. And the only reason that I'm doing that is to try to keep that bait down. Very same reason you throw light, 10 or 12-pound fluorocarbon on a deep diving crankbait.
Hey, people just look at me and Jeff Defew like we're full of shit, and we say we throw a 10XD on 10-pound
on 10 pound. Absolutely. I guarantee you can get that bait 5 feet deeper than somebody on 15.
And you get more bites.
Exactly. You get more bites. The smaller the line diameter, the less drag that line's going to have. And when you make a 60-yard bomb cast out there, there's a lot of line. That's a lot of resistance. So always throw 10-pound fluorocarbon. Again, you kind of have to understand right now with what we're doing with this, fishing it offshore. So most of the places that I'm throwing this, there's a big school of bass there, and a lot of times there's not much cover. So once I get that fish hooked, you just take it easy, take your time. I break very, very few off on 10-pound fluorocarbon, and every time when I do, it's because I'm catching them and I don't retie. That's my own fault. You can't blame that on the line. But 10-pound fluorocarbon to keep this bait down. 2 to say 4 times during the cast, I'll actually press my button and feed this bait line back, and you'll realize after you reel it about say 8 or 10 cranks, and you press your button, if you pay attention to how long that bait, this is 3/4 of an ounce, how long it takes to get back to the bottom, it will shock you at how far it's already gotten up. It might be 6 or 7, 8 feet off the bottom. Of course, on the Tennessee River and a lot of other lakes, most of the fish are going to be, within, say, the bottom 3 or 4 or 5 feet of the water column. But the snap. So I've played with a lot of different things. You can absolutely catch them on the standard little clips that they come with. I do like, this is a trout snap that I get at Bass Pro Shops. I can't remember the size, to be honest, but it's a pretty good, you can see it's a pretty, I don't know.
You have to get used to that.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it. I'm not that good with that. But anyway, it's a pretty good size. You'll notice, put that up there where you can do it better.
Let's see if y'all can see this.
So you'll notice that's actually an open snap, and it freaks everybody out. But Baitman, you can do everything you want to try to pull that thing off. Even with a pair of pliers, it's a pain in the butt. I have lost one fish by that snap opening up, and it was because I should have thrown that one away a long time ago.
So how often will you change your snap? If you out there throwing that scrounger and you get on a huge school and you caught 50 bass?
I'll change it maybe every 5 or 6, 7 days that I go fishing. This one I've had on here for a month.
So you're confident in that
it's still super stout. And I've been fishing this one a bunch. You'll notice, like I was saying, you can actually see just a little hint of chartreuse there that's left. But I like the 5-inch Jerky J as well as the trimmer shad. They're actually two totally different actions. So typically speaking, the stiffer plastic, the harder plastic, gives it a much more natural, it's almost just kind of a shimmy.
Right.
Whereas a real soft bait,
It gets more of an S.
Yeah, it gets more of an S and a real exaggerated action. And I've seen it, I can't tell you how many times. One school will bite the Jerky J that's stiff, real natural shimmy. The next school won't bite this one. You'll catch 2 to my 1 on a trimmer shad that's real aggressive and kind of overcompensating. It almost kind of looks like it's too much, but sometimes they absolutely eat it. But the biggest thing with this bait that is important is you'll notice that if you look at the bottom of the head here, the bait, whether it's the trimmer shad or the Jerky J, I do not want the belly of that bait hanging below the weight, or the bottom of the jig head. So this bait, I was telling you, is very, very fickle. You can absolutely mess up the action of this bait just by how you rig the bait on there. So instead of typically, most people will go right down the middle, kind of the meat of the swim bait. If you can look on this Jerky J, it makes it really easy. It's just like a fluke. It's kind of got a split belly on it.
Yeah.
I will poke it through the meat of the head and out the bottom of this, and then come back up. And what that does is it gives you a ton of meat on that plastic, and it's very streamlined. It does not hang below the plastic, below the head. And the final touches that I'll always do is I'll stick a toothpick. And this is not just with this particular bait. This is any swim bait that I'm rigging up on a jig head, anything like that. You will be, bait manufacturers aren't proud that I'm telling everybody this, but
That's right.
you can catch a ton of bass, even on a Bass Tricks, which is known to be a one-fish bait.
I did a podcast with Byron Velvick, and then we talked on the phone a lot, and Byron talked a lot about, and it was known that he was putting that toothpick there to, and you know, Skeet uses, he actually puts a coffee stir down up on the hook, on the hook, so when the bass bites, this is a beast hook, because you know on the beast hook you'll catch one on Bass Tricks and they just fold up.
Yeah.
Well, he'll take like a piece of a coffee stir or a straw and stick it down there, so when they bite, they can still gap it, but it doesn't let that bait fold over.
Exactly.
But yes, the bait companies don't like that. They want you to buy more baits.
Yep. So you can see I am pulling as hard as I can pull on that, and it will not break. And the reason is because once I get everything situated, and I'll pull this thing back up and get it right. Once I get this thing situated, I really like to, at least when you first start rigging these, I encourage you to do this when you're on the water, because you need to make sure, I can rig one of these things up in my sleep and it'll run perfect. But you need to ensure that it's running right. Before you super glue the head on, you go through all the trouble of putting the toothpicks in and all this mess, you want to make sure that it's wobbling right. You don't want to spend 10 minutes and then have to cut it all off and mess with it. But once I get it running right, if you'll hold this thing up to a light, it's really easy to see right here, but and there's no way with this light backwards to see that, but if you will hold this up to the sun or a bright light, you'll actually be able to see the hook that's actually running through the meat of the plastic. And what I want to do is to plug this toothpick just above the hook point, right where the hook point starts to roll up. I want to put this right above that. And again, to check it, make sure you've got it on the right side of the hook. You just give it a little pull there, and you notice that's not tearing off. You can catch, I tell you, the actual scrounger that I won the coast on, I fished for like 6 weeks after that. Never changed the Jerky J, never changed the head. I did change the snap, this little open snap out a time or two, but I caught them on, there's no telling how many I caught, for like 6 weeks, all of June, and some of July, through literally one bait. It was amazing.
Here's some good questions here. So Sean Z, he says people laugh at him because he fishes scrounger like a hair jig. Let it go to the bottom, reel it a few times, and let it drop. That's actually how Jake fishes one.
It is. And you'll be surprised at how many will actually bite it on the fall. I'm not necessarily, like a hair jig, I'm anticipating them to bite it on the fall. I'm not necessarily anticipating that, but but you would be amazed at how many will bite it. It's almost like I think they really get in behind this bait and what I call shark it.
I'm going to tell you, when you see it in the pool and you kill it like a hair jig, you'll know why they bite.
You'll know.
There's something about a scrounger, and me and Scott Schwacker from Hog Farmer were talking about this the other night. When you stop a scrounger, that bait actually, the bill keeps it from falling immediately.
It does.
It almost hovers.
It almost kind of stalls out.
It stalls out for
weird.
a split second and then falls. And I think those bass see that
Junior, will you lean that up right
stalling action, and they just
lean it up
can't help.
Thank you, bud.
So Jordan Bertram says, why does mine shut that door, Brooks? These bugs are smoking us.
Wouldn't stay here. I get it.
Why does mine spin a lot? They tend to corkscrew. One, they need to be rigged perfectly straight. Number two, in my pants, because I just barked a spider out of here. Number two, if the bill's too stiff and doesn't have any flex to it, they'll tend to spin a lot. And or if the bill has too much flex. So you got to get that perfect balance in the bill. Jacob, my rider on it, this guy says, why does mine spin a lot? They tend to corkscrew out. I say it's because the bill's probably too stiff.
Yeah, so again, it's kind of frustrating. Not every one of them's going to run exactly right. It's just the nature of this plastic. Everything has to be just right. And one thing that I really strongly encourage you to do, and not every brand is doing this, but they seem to be kind of moving in this direction. They're coming with the bills actually off of the head.
Right.
And even if you get some that do come with the bills on or attached to the head, I encourage you, if you're not going to fish them right then, to actually take them off. You want this bill to be, you notice how that bill is perfectly straight, and it's actually somewhat concaved inside of the head. Once you get one right and you see what it looks like, you can very much be able to replicate it. I can kind of be honest, I can walk around a tackle store and kind of point out which ones are going to run better than others.
You know, sometimes you'll walk in there and you'll see them in a 2-pack or whatnot with the bills on them, and then they're like mashed and folded over.
Yeah, so
don't buy the ones where the packages, the scrounger bills are bent up.
Right.
Just
right. It can be a very frustrating bait to get right, but man, once you get it, it's unbelievable how efficient it can be. And this is not Lambert, and I haven't done it as much, but Lambert and a lot of guys, Wheeler won at Chickamauga on this. He didn't talk about it a whole lot, but he caught a bunch on it. We've kind of deemed this as a deep water bait. It's not at all. When I actually learned this technique was down on Logan Martin Lake in about 2010 or 11 in the fall, and they were feeding on really, really small. Dude, that's a good one. Really
gigantic mosquitoes in
dude.
there.
They were feeding on really, really small bait, and we found some in a 1/4 ounce, and we put a Super Fluke Junior, the real thin one.
The biggest sack of bass, I've told you this, and I might have told people, the biggest sack of bass I ever caught out of Lake X was on a Super Fluke Junior on a scrounge.
Exactly.
Freaking smoke.
Yep. But it's a really small bait. Now, it's not a bait that I'm going to throw around a lot of hard cover or even in some grass. Again, if anything at all gets on this bill, it's not going to want to run right. But oftentimes, this is an unbelievable, not this exact model, but the scrounger itself is an unbelievable schooling bait.
Yes.
Most people don't realize this. We're kind of jumping off in left field here, but when you see some bass, now I'm speaking more about some bass that are a little deeper. I don't mean the bass that are schooling in 1 foot or 2 foot of water, but if you've got some bass that are schooling out in even 5 feet of water, a lot of times the smallest bass will all be up on the surface, and you don't realize the big ones are under them.
Right.
This scrounger, I don't mean necessarily the 3/4 ounce, but a 1/4 or a 3/8 ounce. If you could throw that past the schoolers, and it's important, you got to get it past them, because whatever lands in the middle of that is going to get ate by something probably about that long. If If you can throw it past it, let it sink below these little schoolers, it is lights out. So there's a lot of different applications. Although we've kind of deemed this as a deep water offshore technique, it's really not. It's very versatile. It's just not something that I'm going to throw around a lot of cover, a lot of grass, stumps, that sort of thing. It's more open water, but it can be fished in a foot all the way down to, I've caught them as deep as 35 on it.
Oh, best brand of scroungers.
So I tell you, it's funny. It's changing.
I'll be honest. I think you got to have more than one brand.
You do. So I like the one that I throw more than any is the Tennessee River Tackle. I also throw Davis, and I've actually started playing around on the smaller models. I've started playing around with the Scottsboro, both the soft and the hard bill.
Right.
I'm still kind of learning on the Scottsboro.
Tim makes.
Which one is applicable for what plastic that you put on it, and that's what he's doing there. There are certain plastics that will run better on the hard bill as opposed to other plastics that will run better on the soft bill. So and I'm still learning on that side of it with that particular manufacturer. I'm still kind of tweaking and trying to figure out what works where and that sort of thing. But there's a lot of good ones out there. Those are probably the main three. I've caught some on the Cantana. My biggest thing with the Cantana, I think I'm saying that right.
Cantana.
Yeah, whatever it is. It's the Lambert's version. I really like it. But sometimes it's hard to get it to start. Once you get it going and it starts its thump, it runs really well. But I've noticed you kind of have to twitch it a few times, give it a fast crank. You got to do something to get that thing working. The Davis baits as well as the trimmer shad, as long as you've got it rigged right, that thing will start just as soon as you start
next
cranking.
Time you come up in here in the summer, better bring a Thermocell. Thermocell, if you're watching this, I need a little sponsorship.
I'm gonna show y'all my bug tamer
he's
here.
got a t-shirt on football.
A t-shirt over my legs so that I don't get annihilated. I know Marty and Kipper are dying laughing right now because every time that I'm hanging out with those guys, they'll be out in nearly no clothes at all in the middle of a mosquito-infested swamp, and they don't get bit. And I'm like head to toe covered up with clothes, and I'm getting annihilated. So I know they know where I'm coming from on that.
So Ron M asked about the Sujin, which is the Picasso one, which I like that one pretty well, and I like the Hog Farmer Hog Wobbler pretty well too.
I hadn't thrown the Hog Farmer. I've thrown the Picasso a little bit. I'll be honest, I have not spent enough time with all of the different thicknesses. So the cool thing with the Picasso, and to be honest, they're probably the most universal. They've got about 5 different bills, and what that is, it's the thickness of the bill. The thickness of that material is what's going to determine how hard or soft it is. And again, it's really fickle. Certain baits will run better on 45, whereas another bait might run better on a 55. And I'm talking the thickness of it, millimeters.
Jake, I've had this comment happen like 4 or 5 times. Brian Colsack says, "Baitman, your guest looks like a poor man's Kyle Welcher. The guy knows his stuff."
That's right. I like old Kyle. I've been watching him a little bit on YouTube. I'm not a huge YouTuber, but I like what he's doing. He's I tell you what, that dude's got some talent.
He's probably he got Brian Latimer, which is he didn't really start his career. Latimer's a great fisherman, but I would say I don't know Welcher well at all. I probably wouldn't ever pick him out in a crowd. I'd probably actually go, "Hey, Jake." But, the dude can fish.
He can. I'll tell you, not only can he fish, he can play poker. So it's one thing to be able to.
You ain't seen my poker skills.
Well, hey, I got my money on Kyle.
All right, I'll call Welcher out right now. Baitman, Kyle Welcher, YouTube poker derby.
Hey, it's one thing to be a professional at one thing, but to be able to consider yourself a professional bass fisherman and poker player, you gotta be living right.
I did play in the World Series event in Tunica.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So you are the real deal. How about that?
Or I was really done with my money. I didn't make it to the final table, but I cashed. But I've heard a lot of good things about Kyle Welcher too.
Yeah, I have too.
Top 25 at Champlain, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, anyone knows Kyle, tell him, "Hey man, you need to get up on the Baitman. Y'all need to play some poker."
That's right.
We'll figure something out. Come to Kentucky Lake. We'll have a poker tournament at the house here. Baitman Jr., what are you doing? You're just staring out in space, taking up space, don't you? You want to look at some new baits? We got to finish unboxing this, Jake. Check. I know you're a big fan of the bigger version of this bait. This is the Teckle. I hadn't had any.
Yep.
This is the Kick Knocker.
Yep.
Now this is the pup. So I got.
That's the pups. That's the smaller
so that's
version.
the small one.
Yeah, I've got the bigger version, but I haven't seen this.
A lot of you guys always ask me about the Vixen or Barely Legal. Well, watch out, dude. You're gonna get hooked.
Hey, remind me. Let's go over something about clear baits here in a minute when you get done unboxing.
So got basically your Chartreuse shad, which is an unbelievable color almost anywhere. But the deal on these is, you hear that noise.
Mm-hmm.
So this is basically the Barely Legal Vixen, but it's the Teckle Kick Knocker. Same mold, same about everything, or your paycheck, the late payment. But there's something about this bait and the noise it makes. It's very, very unique.
It is. It's very distinct. And I've actually been throwing the bigger version of this here in the last couple weeks. I'm really impressed with it. I like it. The older Vixen, the one thing, and we were talking about this earlier, the one downfall to it is it almost wants to kind of, when you're walking it, it almost kind of wants to walk like nose down, which is perfectly fine when it's real calm. But we're throwing on these shallow bars on Kentucky Lake or the TVA in general. At least I hope it's not going to be slick calm. I want some wind, some waves, and you can kind of you can see that bait struggling to keep its nose up. The Teckle does not seem to have that issue. It seems to be balanced more.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say tail weighted, but it just doesn't have that nose down action to it. It kind of wants to dive through a wave more or less. I'm impressed with it. I like it. I'm gonna have to get me some of those pups. I like that.
Yeah, I got a pretty good deal. I'm not gonna lie, I got 50% off.
Whoa.
Yeah, the store was going out of business. This guy, DIY Bass Fishing, let me know about it, and he went to the store and took
How about
pictures.
that?
What you want, Baitman?
Sweet.
I did grab. Now, how legendary is this bait? I didn't even have one. It's Super Spook Junior in bone. I know everybody likes the big spooks, but I catch them really good on this thing.
You're exactly right.
Especially in shallow water.
Yep. You're exactly right.
Now, I will put a feather hook on the back of that. So, believe it or not, they sell the Super Spook Junior. I'm sure you guys know what it is. But they actually sell it with a feather on it. But the one with the feather doesn't come with saltwater hook.
Correct.
And
If
they
I'm not
charge you $1.50 more.
mistaken, Kobe Krieger's catching them on that exact topwater right now up there at Champlain. He had like 22 something on smallmouth yesterday. He had a couple blow-ups early this morning that about made me want to jump out of my seat.
Dude, Eric Arthur, you sold me a couple custom painted Boeing topwater years ago and it still slays. The old Boeing topwater.
The old one,
they're freaking nasty.
I've got a
man.
few left. One thing real quick it just reminded me I wanted to touch on, kind of going back to this time of year, meaning say mid-July on, really till about October. Again, we've got a lot of these little young of the year, whether it's shad, shiners, whatever your forage is going to be in the lake. They're oftentimes really, really small because they've just hatched here in the last few months. That can be a really, really big issue when you have as much as like what we do on Kentucky Lake. They get very, very size specific. And one way that I have found to kind of combat that issue, and I have absolutely seen it, and I'm sure Baitman has as well, I have seen it where you throw a regular spook and you cannot get one to blow up. I mean, like they're schooling, and you walk your bait all the way through the jumps, and you can't get one to bite. Tie on a little smaller one, you'll start getting a few more bites. But if you
let him out,
right.
I think Baitman Jr. is a little claustrophobic.
That's right. Hey, I don't blame him. But that's better. I'd rather have this door open than the mosquitoes in here.
I can't do the mosquitoes.
That's right. But one thing I want you to think about when you run into that issue where they're feeding on really, really small, young of the year bait fish is to go with a clear bait. Yes. So oftentimes we don't have a lot of bass baits that are really small and are heavy enough to, especially you talk about skewers, make that bomb cast to get to them. They never let you get very close. So you've got to have a bait that's heavy, but yet something really small that matches the hatch. if you go with a totally clear, and we're starting to see this, they're getting to be kind of known. What is it? Naked.
Yeah.
They're calling it like a naked color. It's just a clear. There's no paint
Basically,
on it whatsoever.
Like a painter's blank.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
God, look at freaking mosquitoes.
I'm gonna get him. But if you'll try a totally clear top water, I'm still looking for a good jerkbait that's totally unpainted. I've got, like your Pro Blues that just have a little bluish hue to the back. I'm okay with, but I would like a totally clear bait.
See, Mega Bass, the Bassmaster Classic Edition Vision 110 was clear algae bone. Like, it didn't have the blue chartreuse. It was clear with the little bone dots on it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, they're about $60 now.
Of course. Good thing about a jerkbait, you don't lose very many of them. But that's just something to keep in mind. Anytime that I'm fishing, say, mid-July on through about the middle of late September, 1st October, I'm always going to have a box full of really clear baits. And again, the reason for that is it can be 5 or 6 inches long, but if it's totally clear, especially a top water, that bait doesn't present a silhouette. There's not really a good profile. Like, they see that thing moving, they see it making a commotion, but they can't really size it up and get a good look. And that'll help you a ton on those young of the year pin minnows and things like that. Small bait fish.
Brian asked what conditions you throw those clearing baits. I like, one, schoolers that aren't committing, 2, bright bluebird days.
What did he ask? What was the question?
What conditions you throw the clear baits?
The condition is not so much. Well, even when they're not feeding on, so it's kind of a twofold. So obviously, anytime that they're feeding on the young of the year, the real small bait, but also if you've got slick, calm conditions and really clear water. Again, it's the same concept. They see the disturbance, they see something going on, but there's not this perfect outline of a 4 or 5 inch long bait up there that they can really see what it's doing. It's more just some movement, something going on up there. They can't get a good look, and a lot of times they'll come up and investigate, and hopefully they'll get a hook. But a lot of times when it's like that, even with a clear bait, it's still frustrating because they'll get that far from it, coming 50 miles an hour, and at the last minute they'll turn, or they'll come up there and knock it with their mouth closed, and it's always an issue when you've got clear, calm conditions. But that is one of the best ways to kind of combat that.
And also, if you're in a clear water, I always feel like go to a clear, transparent color.
Absolutely.
But you know what? Those damn smallmouth, you can be Lake St. Clair and you burn a chartreuse and purple jerkbait through there, and they smash it.
Exactly.
Dude, the guys used to kill them on painted blade spinnerbaits.
I still do.
Burn them as fast as you can.
Still do. Right now, one of the Johnston boys, can't remember if it's Corey. I think it's Corey that's finishing in the top. He's in the top 10 at Champlain. He's catching them on the Bone Vision 110 jerkbait. And I think it was Krieger today that was saying I can see that fish 10 feet deep down there. 10 foot of visibility, he's throwing a Bone jerkbait. So, the moral to that is they don't always read the book, the script of what they're supposed to do.
A bass's brain is about that big.
Yeah. Although he'll make you think it's a whole heck of a lot bigger than that. But that's, again, nothing in fishing is black and white. I never want to get set in my ways or set in stone. A good buddy of mine, Dave Mofo, I talked to him this morning. He actually won a tournament on Normandy Lake this morning, so congrats on that. But we were talking about not getting so dialed into what's happening, and I'm keeping that very broad because it can mean anything. Say last weekend we're catching them on boat docks, and say it's cloudy. We're just dialed on these boat docks, and it took us 6 hours to say, okay, maybe the boat dock deal's not quite what's going on. Whereas in reality, we probably should have been thinking ahead there and said, all right, it's cloudy. We know there were some fish on boat docks. Let's go run that for a little bit. If it's not happening, then let's move. Let's juke, jive, do what we've got to do. But just try not to get set in stone. And I hate to say it's so cliche, and I'm not saying it, but the old, fish the moment. And what they're talking about is you want to take all of your past history. So I'll take every day I go fishing, I take all of the knowledge that I've gained in the last 20 years of bass fishing. But I'm not going to go with the mindset of this is what I'm going to do. When I start in a tournament, Dave and I were talking about this, and I've had this conversation with a lot of guys. They want to know every stop, every bait. They want to have it exactly dialed in the night before. And maybe for some guys that works. Me, I'm a very free fisherman. I just kind of let the fish try to tell me what to do, and more times than not what I'm not doing right. But I'll try to get, like, say for a tournament, I'll try to have like a place or two in mind. All right, I'm going to start here. If this doesn't work out, I'm going to go here. That's as far as I want to go. Because in those first two stops, those bass should give me some indication as to what's happening that day. Not what happened yesterday in practice or last week in my little Tuesday nighter. I want to know what's going on right now. Exactly. And if I've already got this mindset of I'm going to go here and then I'm going to go there, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, throw this bait, it takes you longer to make those adjustments. Whereas if you go in with a kind of I've got a plan, but it's a very loose kind of idea of what I want to do. And if I go through a place or two and I don't get a bite, then that tells me, hey, something's changed today. Let's go do something different. There's a lot of things that can, determine how to make that decision and where you need to go next. But I see this over and over and over. And hey, I'm guilty of it a time or two. I'll get so keyed in on something it'll take me 3/4 of the day to realize that that's not happening anymore.
Sorry, I'm yawning.
Even if it was
midnight shift kills me.
Yesterday, it's these bass are going to change. They'll change by the hour. So
shout out to Billy Knows, $20 make you holler.
Oh,
appreciate that donation, Billy. I know you're a big fan of Jake. Fished with him several times.
That's right. We've had a lot of fun together. Looking forward. We've got a trip coming up here in a couple weeks. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to try to catch his PB smallmouth. I'm not telling you where we're going to do it. It's a little stealthy, but
I know where it can go. It's up on my end of that.
Uh-oh.
It's called the river.
That's right.
Go down there and you can get your arm broke.
That's
I'll be honest, the best time to go down there is about November.
Yep.
With an A-rig.
Yep. I've never fished below Barkley or Kentucky Dam. I've always wanted to go up there. I just never made it up this way.
TV show I did with Mark Menendez is going to be awesome. He literally caught about 17 pounds in 30 minutes on the Cumberland River.
Awesome.
Burning a red-eye shad in a foot of water.
Really?
Around
How about
Rip
that?
Rap. It was nasty.
How about that? Was that early spring? Or?
No, that was in October.
October.
It was one of those the best days in October. It looks like it's nasty, kind of misty rain, lots of overcast. A day you can do all kinds of stuff. So, let's see. Austin Hicks, Jake, what bait do you flip with the most in late summer, if you do any flipping?
So I have a handful of baits that I flip. One is a Pit Boss. One's a beaver style bait. I don't think that as far as and a lot of guys are going to argue about this, and that's fine. They've got a different opinion. I don't think it's so much what exact bait that it is. I think I kind of break it down. There's two different styles. You've got a flapping bait like a
Rage Crawl,
Spicy Beaver. Pit Boss has even kind of got the outer legs will flap. And then you've got what I'm calling a glide bait. Now, obviously, I don't mean a true glide, but I mean a glider.
Like a D-bomb
or a beaver.
Or a 6-inch prawn, just something that it doesn't have any action. It just falls and you kind of glide.
Exactly. So the way that I break that down, and you'll find that each day they'll bite one more than the other. But I think in the summertime, what's more important than that, and I'm not taking away from that, it is important because one day they'll want one or the other, but it's more important on the rate of fall at which that bait is going to the bottom. And that doesn't matter whether we're talking a beaver style bait or a flapping style bait. Based on the water conditions, the clarity, there's a lot of factors that'll go in, but typically in the late summer, if I've got, a foot or more of visibility, which is not really the first, you don't really think about flipping when it's that kind of conditions, but I'll go with a really heavy weight. I want that bait to really rock it down to the bottom.
And just those fish react
exactly,
to it.
react to it. We get into, and again, that could be a 3/4 on a pit boss. And to get the same rate of fall, you might have to throw a 1/2 ounce on a beaver style bait because it just doesn't have all those appendages that's slowing it down. But I think rate of fall makes a much bigger difference than the specific bait. Now again, I like a pit boss, I like a spicy beaver, the D-bomb, the sweet beavers, but I'll tell you,
I'm not gonna lie, I'm just a fan of the beaver.
Yep, one of my favorite flipping baits is a Cinco.
Yes, it is.
And I'm not talking weightless. I'm way too impatient to do all that mess. I'll flip it on a weight, but a Cinco, for whatever reason, they'll bite it. And they'll do that when the water temperature is 35 or 105.
Reaction Innovations, the Pocket Rocket.
Pocket Rocket's
is an
a good
amazing
one.
flipping bait.
It is. The Ocho, you can't go wrong with a Gary Yamamoto.
And it's weird you would think, why would they want some? Because you flip it, it really does nothing. I think it's all about it just.
Yep, and I'll tell
shoots
you,
down
was it last week or week before we got on and I actually don't have any yet, but I don't see any.
Is it made from 6 cents?
The Ned Fry. Oh, I got too many pants.
That's it right there, bud.
So I would not have thought about this. This is something that I will fish on a Ned rig. I'll even Nico rig this bait. A customer of mine actually put this on like a 1/4 or 3/8 ounce weight and wore me out.
Really?
Flipping it around isolated pieces of wood.
What color?
It was like a green pumpkin, watermelon red, somewhere.
That's
in
a
there.
really good bait. Don't get a lot of as love as some of those. Now, the first time I ever fished their Cinco bait was actually with you in that video.
Yeah, that's right.
And the clout works really good. I
Yep.
caught some on it last week.
I'm excited about the Divine Shaky Worm too.
I got that big one. I got a pile of them here. We're gonna send a big thank you bag to Monty Mac. I'm sure Monty won't mind you going through that.
That's right.
That's my favorite bait right now they make. That's the stroker crawl.
Yeah, I haven't seen this
It's
yet.
freaking amazing on the back of a jig. You can flip that. You can Texas rig it. It's great on a football jig and on a flipping jig. It will make if you want to skip a jig, when you put that on the back of a jig.
I bet that'd be a kick-ass swim jig trailer.
Yes, it is.
I like that.
We need more daylight, more
What's
pull
that
time.
called? A stroker crawl.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one? Do they only make that in one size, or is there a?
That's
I see
it.
it's 3.3, so I didn't know if they made a different size.
I don't know if they will or not, but I'll be honest.
in saying that, that's the right size. I was just
that
asking.
was the one bait they first come out with. So I don't know if I like that or not. And now it's like, dude, that's my jam.
I like that.
The color I like right here, I'm gonna give myself a plug. This one right here, man. If you guys get on the 6 Cents website and you want some stroker crawls, if they've got this one in stock, it's melon dust, man. This is the deal. Where it's got that magic crawl like,
Ooh,
but it's almost kind of like watermelon. Dude,
man, I like that.
they smashed that. That's
That's
good. That one and the bluegrass magic.
That's a really natural. Man, I like that.
Yeah.
That'd be a good clear water.
They may be sold out, man. I think I've told too many people how good that color is. But it's just, I like natural colors. Obviously, your green pumpkins you can't go wrong with, or I've got like every color. I like
that.
them.
I'm gonna check that out. Stroker crawl.
Dude, the water's up on Kentucky Lake. I'm not so sure you can't go flip a bush right now.
Definitely on some isolated wood. I tell you something, that'd be a sleeper Ned rig. Old Marty Mack know about that. That thing have some action to it. It's just something different. I've thrown a Ned rig more this year with Monty. It's funny, we've fished quite a bit this year, and we've caught a lot of really good fish, a lot of big bags, and we've had a lot of fun. But it's like every single time him and I get together,
It's Ned rig time.
it's the most finessey, goofy. If you know Monty, he's a like 20-pound mono and a big heavy stick. I mean, he's not a finesse fisherman, so it's taken everything I've had to get him to go to a spinning rod and light line, but dude, he has been whooping my tail on a Ned rig all year. Typically, I'll throw a Nico and he'll throw a Ned just to get a little different look. But he actually caught like an 8.2 or 8. It was that weighed 8 something the other day on a Ned rig of all things.
Yeah, so everyone thinks Ned rig is, I was always funny. People say, oh, Major League Fishing, they're just going to use Ned rigs. Well, dude, I've seen some giant bass come on Ned
You're
rig,
absolutely
especially
right.
smallmouth.
Yep.
You look at those guys up north.
Yeah. It's a
With
main
their hammer and those
player.
big smallmouth, little bitty old Ned
Yep.
rig.
It's a main player.
And I don't know why, I couldn't tell you. And we talk about throwing big baits for big fish, but there's Ned Rig Nation and all this on
Yep.
Facebook. Guys are catching double digits on Ned Rig.
Absolutely.
I think it's because you just look at a small, easy meal.
It is.
Even big fish are not going to pass down an easy
Yep.
meal.
Yeah, well, typically you're fishing it a lot slower, real methodical, and I think that fish has got plenty of time to look at it, kind of check it out, and it's not one of those deals where, whoop, there it went, and I didn't even have time to really think about it. So it's regardless of whether he's 10 inches or 10 pounds, they'll bite a Ned rig. It's not my favorite way to catch them, but I'll do it if I have to.
It's almost 10 o'clock. We've been here almost 2 hours, but I got a few things. We got to. I got some more balsa crankbaits here. Oh, that's a legendary bait.
Can I open it?
Yes, Jake, I'll let you open it and see what you think. Dude, I've got a rare bait. I bought it on eBay. I got a steal on this thing. This is a collecting bait for me. We'll see if Jake recognizes the face that's on this package.
Oh, are you kidding me? I haven't seen one of those in forever.
That's the Pro Autograph Series Bomber Long A. And yes, that is Mr. Van Damage, Kevin Van Dam, on the package.
On the bomber package.
On a
that
bomber
is
package.
Old school.
This is probably mid to early 90s. It's probably 93, 94. This is one of the hardest ones to find in this Pro Autograph Series is this Clown Long A. And it's got the Excalibur rotating trebles.
Now,
I paid $9 for this.
Is that the long A, like the Waken long A? Is that the one that
They take the cigarette lighter, heat it, and bend the bill.
Yeah, isn't that what they do? A lot of those like Table Rock and Bull Shoals guys.
Yeah.
I think it's a long A, like the old school long A's. Apparently the new ones don't do it as well, but
1996 is when this bait was put out. So about 98 he went to Strike King, but I've been trying to collect the whole series of this Protograph. So there's another color of this long A, and Jim Bitter's got some. So, but guys, this is a hard bait to find, and I don't collect a lot of baits, but I'm trying to get the whole thing of that. So put that over there by Jimmy Houston.
No, we'll just take that right on back to Paris.
That's all right.
No, I shout out to Knowles. He said he caught one in 39 foot on. I'm assuming that's on Pickwick with Brent Anderson. Brent's a great dude. I think he's back down to Vero.
Sorry about them barking spiders, Jake.
But that's in fact the deepest bass that I have ever caught on the Tennessee River was in 39.
Wow. It
was practicing for the Costa that I won. They were out in the mouth of Bird Bay not the bottom because it's about 50 feet out there, but basically the bottom of the river channel. And I mean, it was the mother lode. It was every bass that anybody's ledge fished Kentucky Lake knows, the big community school that gets out in front of Bird Bay, or used to rather. And I had relocated them. They'd actually shifted down because of the pressure, everybody idling over them. And I was super excited to, when I found them, because I knew nobody's looking in 35 or 40 feet of water. I went home that night and I was laying in bed and I was sitting there thinking, I was all fired up. Like, that's my little juice hole. This is what I've been looking for. And then I got thinking, how in the world am I going to keep those dudes alive for, a whole day coming out of 40 foot of water? And at that time, I wasn't as good as I am now at keeping them alive and fizzing them and doing that sort of stuff. So I went out, moral of the story, I went out the next morning just going to see. I'm going to keep 3 bass. I'm going to fizz one. I'm going to use anal clips on one. And I'm going to not do anything to one, all out of that school.
Right. They
were all coming 36 to 40 feet of water. And I couldn't keep any of them alive. They lasted about 2 or 3 hours. And I'm not going to say I could have won on that school, that could have been a huge player in that tournament. But I never stopped on them because
if you can't keep them alive,
I couldn't keep them alive.
Weigh 'em in.
But it was really neat. That's cool. I saw that comment. That's the deepest I've ever caught one as well on the Tennessee River.
We're going to unbox this and then we're getting out of here. So I had to do my thumbnail and all that good stuff. But buddy of mine, Dustin Phillips. Dustin, if you're watching, shout out. We went in together on some balsa baits, but then he sent me some of these guys. This is I'll take this out of the package. These are some of my favorite baits, discontinued Rapala DT flat 7s, and these two were custom painted by the very famous Mark Restivo. If you know what I'm talking about, Mark is one of the best custom painters out there in the business. And I never owned any of his baits, but dude, this thing right here, this guy looks like a shad.
Man, that's interesting. I've never noticed that the bill actually turns down. This is a bait I've never thrown.
It does.
Oddly enough, I've never thrown this crankbait.
They discontinued, but this is one of my favorite spring and fall deals.
Yep.
But
here's the
it deflects really well. So that Dustin said this is a carp color, very similar to like that old crawdad shad rat. I know that is slay.
I've caught a million on a 5XD or a Series 5 in the spring on their carp.
Baby carp?
Yeah, baby carp color.
But, dude, that paint job right there is as good of anything I've seen. I really like this. That's like almost a thread finish.
That's sexy.
I'd like to see. I know Mark is very famous for his Repo Man Vixen paint jobs. Dude, that right there.
Oh, I've never. Where's that cat out of? I need to send him some
I don't know.
stuff. I like that.
Dustin knows. He is. I don't know where Restivo's at, but man, he's good. But I love the DT flat 7s. I'm looking forward for the new OG Slim.
Yep.
You know, the Odd Defoe deal.
Yep, the Odd Defoe.
But
he's got a whole line coming out, doesn't he? Like Odd's Garage or something. He's got a whole line of stuff.
It's not going to stop me from buying these. These are my favorite. There's a time and place for that coffin bill, and this is one of the best baits. That old Bandit Flat Max got that real narrow coffin bill.
Yep.
Those two.
I remember that.
And then he sent me, I don't even know who made this. He said a buddy of his makes this bait. It's more of like your bigger round balsa. Again, that's a custom painted deal. Kind of like a Big O. Very similar. Maybe a Big O meets a E2 from Zoom. Really like that, man.
Sorry. I got guys.
And then another one from Jimmy Ader's Custom Baits. Me and Jake threw a couple of these in the pool, and this is color is baby popcorn, y'all. You know me, I like that purple, some flake in it, got that Norman flake look. The Balsa collection has really grown. I tell you what, when I turn that camera like that, you can see the bait's a whole lot better. What's Jake getting in? Jake is in my box right now.
Marty said get what we need for our next tournament. So I'm digging through, checking it out.
I'll have to put these in there, but guys, we're fixing to jump off here. I really appreciate everybody joining us stream. If you guys enjoyed Jake being on here, let me know. We probably need to get Jake in here right before duck season.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be
kind of a fall winter fishing deal.
Yeah, I tell you something else that I'd like us to do is I would love for us to get out and do a topwater show. You know, get out there and get some of these big blow ups. Last year, I didn't get as many bites as I normally do per day. You know, I was only getting about 8 to say 15 bites a day. But we caught some giants last year, some monster bags. I was actually, quick story, I was supposed to film a TV show. We're actually going to do it this fall. Going to film a TV show. We had some issues, some conflicts. We couldn't make it work. I'd been saving this school for like 3 weeks. Every now and then I'd ease up there and make a cast, just make sure they were still there. And when I finally got the phone call that we weren't going to do it that fall, I called my dad and took my oldest son out, and I would have given anything to have had you there that day.
I think I remember seeing pictures
it was
on
unbelievable. I mean, from the very first cast to the little juice hole, it was on. So we need to get together and do that. That'd
Absolutely.
be fun. It the topwater deal really. We're still going to deal with kind of the dog days of the summer through most of August. Usually on Kentucky Lake, the smallmouth will move up and get on these shallow bars and be susceptible to biting the topwater about the last week of August. But usually the first week of September, really the second week of September, is when all the largemouth will flood up there. And oddly enough, most of the smallmouth leave. When the smallmouth is the first to go up there, and then they'll stay for a week or maybe 2 weeks. And buddy, I mean overnight. They'll leave and the largies will move in. So,
well, guys, if you want to get a hold of Jake, I'm going to leave his email address, Facebook page thing in the comments. I'll do that. It'll all be up there in the morning. So the new XPS swimmer at Bass Pro Shop is not the same as the baby. It's a lot smaller. The smaller one ain't worth the flip. I won't even buy it. So but anyways, we're gonna jump off here. Make sure you smash the like button for me. Appreciate all the love in the last video of me and Baitman Jr. at home, Sporting Goods, ACS Marine. Jake used to work there. Good people there.
Yep, great folks.
So YouTube likes it when y'all smash the like button and leave a comment after the video. I don't know what kind of comment to leave. What do you want to see Jake talk about this fall? What kind of topwater baits, stuff like that, do you want to see us go over?
Yeah, y'all give us.
Man, I got a lot of topwater baits. We could be here for like 4 hours.
Yeah, and you don't even want me to bring mine. I mean, we got to have we need a bigger room here for my topwater assortment. So.
Anyways, guys, thanks so much. Be sure to check Jake out. Check out the Jinko New Gambler rods. That
high
one
roller.
Really, the high roller. That's me. I'm the high roller. Actually, no, a guy racing a dirt car. His nickname was the High Side Hustler. So
nice. I like that.
That's a good combo.
That's pretty snazzy. I like that.
But if you want Jake on here more, maybe he just lives so far away. Maybe I need to go to Jake's house because he got Wi-Fi.
Yeah, man.
We can go in his bait room. I've seen it. It ain't. I won't comment. He's got a lot of stuff. So, all right, guys. Thanks so much for joining. Smash the like button.